Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving straight into the sacred ordinance of ordinary life, and we're going to completely unpack how the Bible transforms our view of the everyday, mundane stuff. If you're coming from a Reformed Calvinist background, you know we talk a lot about God's absolute sovereignty, but we're talking about His rule over every single square inch of reality. He doesn't just rule the cosmos, He's actively governing the absolute most mundane parts of your Tuesday.
Let's kick things off right at the beginning with a pretty striking passage from the Bible. Exodus 21:24 says, "Eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot." Now, I get it. At first glance, reading through Exodus 21 feels kind of strange, right? It reads like a list of totally outdated rules about oxen, property damage, and workplace injuries. But stick with me, because what we're going to discover today is that these aren't just obscure regulations. They actually reveal His character, and they show us exactly how deeply He cares about our most ordinary, day-to-day interactions.
To truly grasp this theology, here's our macro to micro journey for this explainer. 1. Exodus 21. Life is sacred. 2. Context behind the Bible laws. 3. Human life has infinite worth. 4. Contrasting sacred and secular views. 5. Steps for college student life. And finally, 6. Conclusion, honor God's image daily.
All right, Section 1. Exodus 21. Life is sacred. Seeing the divine in the everyday.
So we really need to highlight the main argument here. Holiness, it isn't just about worship on a Sunday morning. It literally shows up in how you handle the most ordinary, seemingly unglamorous stuff on a normal Monday afternoon. The text gives us these incredibly detailed instructions. We're talking laws about an ox goring someone, accidental property damage, or what happens when a servant gets injured. You might be wondering, why on earth are these in the Bible? Well, because God governs the smallest, most mundane details of life. It proves this massive theological point. Absolutely nothing is outside of His comprehensive control. He is sovereign over those grand, sweeping spiritual moments, sure, but He is equally sovereign over a random workplace dispute. The ordinary details, they matter profoundly to Him.
Moving on to Section 2, Context behind the Bible laws, from deliverance to daily living.
Now, before we dive into the specific details of how this applies directly to us, we have to establish the historical context. You can't just lift verses out of the Bible without understanding where they sit in God's grand narrative. Think of this timeline of deliverance. In the past, God miraculously saved Israel from the slavery of Egypt. But right here in the present moment of Exodus 21, He's laying down the framework for their new daily life. It's wild to think about, but the very same God who wielded absolute power to part the Red Sea is the exact same God who now has highly specific opinions on how you handle your neighbor's ox. He didn't just deliver them and bail. His daily governance is intentionally designed to shape a holy community for the future.
Next up, Section 3. Human life has infinite worth, bearing the image of the Creator.
Here is the foundational conviction of this entire passage. The only reason God cares so much about an ox or a workplace injury or a physical altercation is because human life has infinite worth. Why? Because we bear the image of the Father. And the supporting evidence for this across the text is absolutely compelling. Destroying the image of God is a severe offense. Genesis 9:6 clearly establishes that murder is a capital offense specifically because it destroys His image. The laws in Exodus show that even an accidental death demands accountability. So the takeaway here is actually pretty profound. You are never, ever just dealing with a random person. You are always interacting with someone God made, someone He loves, and someone who perfectly reflects His divine image. Even those casual cruelties of life, like ignoring a dorm mate or giving someone a dismissive attitude, those matter deeply to Him.
Now let's look at how this redefines a super famous phrase. Remember that eye for eye principle we read at the very beginning of this explainer? Our modern ears hear that and we think, wow, that sounds incredibly harsh. But historically, it was actually a strict limit on revenge. It wasn't some free pass to go hurt someone who wronged you. Actually, scratch that. It was the exact opposite. It was a legal framework to ensure that punishment was strictly proportional to the offense. No more, no less. It was literally designed to protect human dignity and stop these escalating cycles of vengeance in their tracks.
Which brings us to Section 4, Contrasting Sacred and Secular Views, Obliterating the Divide.
This whole perspective shift forces us to compare and contrast two opposing theories of Christian living. Let's look at this comparison. Theory 1 is what we'll call the secular versus sacred divide. This is a huge temptation for a lot of us, right? We divide our lives into sacred moments, like worship, Bible study, and prayer, and secular moments, like doing your chores, enjoying your free time, or how you treat the person next to you when you are just totally exhausted. But then there's Theory 2, the unified biblical worldview.
And Exodus 21 just absolutely obliterates that secular-sacred divide entirely. God is actively present in the nitty-gritty details of your ordinary Monday tasks. There is no on and off switch in the life of a disciple. Handling a conflict is just as spiritual as singing a hymn.
Let's make this practical. Section 5. Steps for college student life. Living it out in your community.
So, what does this actually look like for college students navigating dorm life, small groups, and shared responsibilities? We can break this down into a clear step-by-step process. Step 1. Treat every single person in your community with their God-given dignity. That means checking your impatient words or dismissive attitudes right at the door. Step 2. Be the kind of person who does the small things well. Show up on time, keep your word, and absolutely pull your weight in shared chores. Remember, God cares about the oxen and property of today, which basically translates to your shared dorm kitchen or living room. And step 3. Let this truth completely shape your evangelism. You don't just share the gospel because it's some sort of mission assignment. You share it because the people sitting across from you in the dining hall are infinitely precious to God.
Finally, Section 6, Conclusion. Honor God's image daily, the sacred ordinance of ordinary life.
Let's summarize our key findings from this research. If you remember literally only one thing from this explainer, let it be this. Every person bears God's image. The gospel doesn't devalue human life, it significantly deepens it. The crucial takeaway is that the way you handle the ordinary, those totally unglamorous interactions, or the way you speak to someone when you're just deeply frustrated, is profoundly spiritual. You are called to honor His truth, not just in the big flashy moments when everyone is watching, but in the quiet, mundane details of a random Tuesday afternoon. I want to leave you with this final, kind of provocative thought to chew on next time you face an irritation in your community. Ask yourself, where in your daily life have you been treating interactions as spiritually neutral? What would fundamentally change if you stopped seeing your chores or your frustrating conversations as secular distractions and instead treated every single ordinary interaction as a profound opportunity to honor Christ? Think about what a truly gospel-shaped response looks like when your knee-jerk instinct is just to react harshly. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I hope this really transforms how you see the sacred ordinance of your ordinary life.